Talk 285. Devotee, if the self be itself aware, why am I not aware of the same even now? Maharishi, there is no duality. Your present knowledge is due to the ego and only relating. Relative knowledge requires a subject and an object, whereas the awareness of the self is absolute and requires no object. Remembrance also is similarly relative, requiring an object to be remembered and a subject to remember. When there is no duality, who is to remember whom? Devotee. What happens to the created ego when the body dies? Maharishi. Ego is I thought. In its subtle form, it remains a thought, whereas in its gross aspect, it embraces the mind, the senses, and the body. They disappear in deep slumber along with the ego. Still, the self is there. Similarly, it will be in death. Ego is not an entity dependent of the self, in order that it must be created or destroyed by itself. It functions as an instrument of the self and periodically ceases to function. That is to say, it appears and disappears. This might be considered to be birth and death. Relative knowledge pertains to the mind and not to the self. It is therefore illusory and not permanent. Take a scientist for instance. He formulates a theory that the earth is round and goes on to prove it and establish it on an incontrovertible basis. When he falls asleep, the whole idea vanishes. His mind is left a blank. What does it matter if the world remains round or flat when he is asleep? So you see the futility of all such relative knowledge. One should go beyond such relative knowledge and abide in the self. Real knowledge is such experience and not apprehension of by the mind. Devotee, why does not Sri Bhagwan go about and preach the truth to the people at large? Maharishi, how do you know that I am not doing it? Does preaching consist in mounting a platform and haranguing to the people around? Preaching is simple communication of knowledge. It may be done in silence too. What do you think of a man listening to a harangue for an hour and going away without being impressed by it so as to change his life? Compare him with another who sits in a holy presence and leaves after some time with his outlook on life totally changed. Which is better, to preach loudly without effect, or to sit silently sending forth intuitive forces to play on others? Again, how does a speech arise? There is abstract knowledge, unmanifest. From it there rises the ego, which gives rise to thoughts and words successively. So then abstract knowledge, and then ego, then thoughts, then words. Words are therefore the great grandson of the original source. If words can produce an effect, how much more powerful should the preaching through silence be? Judge for yourself.